Leaders in the maritime, mining, steel and energy industries are joining forces to develop the first ever concept for a green corridor between South Africa and Europe. They want to develop a maritime green corridor for the zero-emission shipping of iron ore between South Africa and Europe. Now, that initiative is the first of its kind from Africa and represents a crucial step in the region's involvement in shipping's decarbonisation. For more on this, we're joined by Global Maritime Forum CEO Johannah Christensen. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Maybe just give us a broad sense of what exactly this initiative is and apart from what I've mentioned in my intro, what it looks to achieve.
So international shipping is facing an enormous challenge. Over the coming decades, it needs to transition from fossil fuels to new green fuels and replace approximately 300 million tons of fuel that are used annually through new green fuels that are produced using renewable energy. And the exciting thing is that South Africa has an opportunity to be part of the solution because of its significant renewable energy potential. It actually has a chance to produce some of these fuels. On top of that, South Africa sits along major trade routes. And so it has this enormous potential. And what this particular initiative does is to find a way to realize this potential with a specific group of stakeholders. So some companies that are going to work together to explore this potential and see how they can implement it in their trades.
Yeah, and maybe just give us a sense of its importance. You've just mentioned there the contribution and the advantages of this initiative, but give us a sense of the kind of sea pollution that the world is exposed to at the moment and how initiatives of this nature perhaps may reverse the dire effects of the pollution that we've seen happen over decades.
So global shipping accounts for approximately 3% of greenhouse gas emissions, so climate emissions, at a global scale. And of course, transitioning shipping away from fossil fuels will be a way to tackle those emissions. In addition, the fuels that are used today actually have a significant amount of air pollution as well. So especially in coastal areas around major port hubs, such as those that you have in South Africa as well, Durban, Port Elizabeth, et cetera, all these ports, they have significant air pollution as well from maritime shipping. And this is a way to tackle this pollution. So for coastal communities, for port cities, on top of the fact that we would be tackling the shipping sector's greenhouse gas emissions.
Now, this is a corridor between South Africa and Europe, and I'm wondering if you're having any other conversations in terms of other routes that will be established with similar initiatives as we look to tackle the issue of greenhouse emissions, carbon emissions rather.
So currently there are some 20 routes under development, and they're all at very early stages. This is a concept, this idea of a route-based approach to tackling climate emissions from shipping is a new concept. There's about 20 projects underway. Another one looks, for example, at shipping iron ore from Australia to China and to other parts of Asia. One looks at shipping containers, so shipping consumer goods from Asia to Rotterdam. So there are many, many other projects under development at this time. And of course, this is really exciting. They're all in early stages of development. But it's super exciting that this one is the first one in Africa.
Yeah. Talk us through some of the costs associated with initiatives of this nature and, of course, their sustainability thereafter, that expenditure of initiating this project.
The most of the cost will be around the production of the fuel. So the green fuels that are going to power ships in the future are quite a bit more expensive, maybe up to 3 times more expensive than traditional fuels. And there's a lot of investment that's needed in infrastructure. So developing the renewable energy infrastructure and the production of the infrastructure that's needed to produce the fuels and make them available in ports is part of what is going to be the cost of this. at a global scale that runs in the billions of dollars, but of course, and in the hundreds of billions of dollars. But at a for this particular project, of course, the scale is much, much, much less.
Yeah.
But it's also an opportunity in terms of inward investment into South Africa. And that's one of the exciting elements of this particular initiative.
Yeah, it is an investment indeed. And of course, many opportunities will be created for various communities that are in and around those areas wherein that corridor exists. But based on what you've expressed in terms of the cost of the green fuel, your engagements with different stakeholders, because you do say this is in its initial stages, is there a healthy appetite for this to be rolled out on a broader scale, even with the costs associated with it?
So that's what we're about to find out. I think it's too soon to say. The idea with this particular project is to figure out how can the different companies that are involved in this particular trade, how can they all bear a part of the cost? So how can they share the cost and the risk that's associated, and then test the technologies, test the business models, and they're obviously all on board, and they're interested in pursuing this particular opportunity because it's a way for them to meet their own climate goals as well. And then we will have to see whether it will find broader uptake in the market. That's certainly the intent. It is that we'll test a concept, and on that basis, more companies can see fit to invest in the production of the fuels and in shipping goods in this green manner.
Thank you very much for those interesting insights. That is the CEO of Global Maritime Forum, Johannah Christensen, joining us this morning to talk about that initiative that is really just moving in line with climate change goals that many stakeholders and governments are trying to adhere to as we try and reverse the effects of pollution.